If I told you that I was in Nottinghamshire and not in some American oil field somewhere, I dare say a lot of those that live in Nottinghamshire will be surprised, because this area of the county holds a rather well kept secret, to be honest. This was an area that we certainly never learnt about at school, and I think we should have done, because Duke's Wood area and the Eakin area of Nottinghamshire played a vital part in the war effort, and it involved Americans as well. Duke's Wood is a lovely place just to pop in, and especially on a summer's day, it's teeming with insects. It's a deciduous woodland, one of several woods that sort of interlink together in this local area. But there are nice clearings, usually small clearings, which are incredibly flower rich. It's well worth popping in and having a quiet walk around, and it usually is a very quiet place. Duke's Wood's also vitally important for being the site of Nottinghamshire's oil field. Prior to 1939, Britain was dependent on America and Iran, of all places, for its oil, and around 80% of Britain's oil was imported from those two countries. Now, in the first 7 months of 1941, the U-boats of the opposing forces had sunk around 681 vessels carrying oil. And by the autumn of 1942, the Germans were sinking an average of 700,000 tonnes of oil a month. It's an incredible amount. Now, oil had been known from underneath Eakin for a number of years prior to the outbreak of World War II, and pumping had already started from a small well that had been spudded in, as the technical term, presumably an American technical term, and that began in 1939. As the government needed to find alternative sources of oil, attentions were naturally focused on the village of Eakin, a quiet little Nottinghamshire village, and indeed it still is to this day. Now, oil had been known for a number of years to be under Eakin, and just before the outbreak of World War II, a small amount had already been started being pumped out. As the government needed to find alternative sources of oil, attentions were naturally drawn to the Eakin area. Under extreme secrecy, Britain contacted 2 oil companies, both of them in America, and asked if they could supply equipment and men to help set up the oil field here at Duke's Wood. The 2 companies were the Noble Drilling Corporation and the Fane Porter Drilling Company. Both were happy to help and didn't require any money, just enough money to recover their expenses. Both sent equipment and men to help with the project. In February 1943, 42 American experienced oilmen known as Roughnecks came over to England, and their task was to establish the Duke's Wood oil field and hopefully get it done within 1 year. Now, the so-called Roughnecks were recruited and basically told that they would be working within a war zone under British censorship, and absolute secrecy had to be kept at all times. On that note, they frequently told inquisitive local folk that they were making a movie, of all things. By the end of the oilmen's contract, a daily amount of 3,000 US barrels of oil were being produced, and by the end of 1943, a total of 2,289,207 barrels of high-grade oil had been pumped and sent to the oil refineries. The oilmen did an absolutely fabulous job and surpassed the expectations of both the British and American governments. Now, the statue that's in the middle of Duke's Wood to the old American roughneck. Is known as the Oil Patch Warrior, and it was erected here in Dukeswood in 1991. It's a memorial to those Americans who came and worked here at Dukeswood and for their contribution to the war effort. An exact replica was also erected in Ardmore, Oklahoma, the American town from where those roughnecks originated from all those years ago. It has to be remembered what a vital part those Americans played for the great war effort at the time. Dread to think what might have happened had they not come over here and got so much oil out, oil that was vital to the war effort. It's very easy to see how these nodding donkeys came to be referred to as nodding donkeys. It's nice that they're still here. There's several of them in this part of Dukeswood. It's well worth bringing the kids along and having a look. There's several notice boards that tell of the history of the oil workers here. I wish we'd have learnt about this at school, even locally in Nottingham during the 1970s. Not a thing was mentioned about this. Yet it was such an important part of history, and especially Nottinghamshire history as well, but it was a vital part of the UK's war effort. But it's nice to see that these are still standing, and in such a nice setting as well, because this is a lovely bit of woodland. It's not a woodland I've covered greatly, although I bird watched and patch watched egret for 17 years. I didn't come up this far, couldn't do it all. There's been some good invertebrates found here, but there should be a lot more, but no one's covered it with any regularity. But it's a lovely spot just to come and visit. Now, because Dukeswood is situated east of the A614, it's on clay-based soil. It's at the top of a hill, but if we've had any rain, if you intend to visit, then give it a couple of days to dry out. It's usually very wet here and quite muddy, if not very muddy. It's very similar to Lound Wood at Eakin and Harehill Wood, also locally at Kersal. And in terms of its range of species of trees and the understory shrubs, the three woodlands are pretty much identical. It's predominantly ash woodland, so as a consequence of ash dieback being brought into the UK a number of years ago, a lot of the mature ash trees here will be condemned. It's a sad state of affairs, but ash is probably the dominant tree here. There's quite a few oaks, but it's mostly ash in terms of the tall trees. The understory shrubs underneath the ash and the oak, there's a lot of field maple here, also sallow as well. It's a woodland that you would expect the purple emperor butterfly to be honest, looking at it. There's some very suitable high canopy trees, and from what I've seen on a quick walk about here, some very suitable sallows as well. Well, I don't know who Notts Wildlife Trust got in to hang these gates, but I think maybe a fresh pair of glasses would be in order. There's something substantially wrong with the gate that you can see here. I wonder if you can see what it is and why it's wrong. If you walk east and continue east through Dukeswood, you'll cut across between two lots of fields, and then you'll reach the edge of another area of woodland And then this behind me, this is Manty Common, which again, as you can see, is another Notts Wildlife Trust reserve. Many years ago, well, not that many, in the 1990s, this, and including a pair just this side of Duke's Wood, used to be the home, the last home for breeding nightingales in Nottinghamshire. This was the go-to site. I remember you could drop on a pair up against a small pond up just into Duke's Wood there, soft as anything. But I remember one afternoon or early evening when I was just down here and there was a nightingale singing its head off in a bramble. I was in that bramble at the time and I couldn't see it for love nor money. Sat there listening to it for 10-15 minutes trying to see it. Never did lay eyes on that particular individual, but it was quite a surreal experience being so close to a bird with such a fabulous song. Although in the case of nightingales, it's more an arrangement and mixture of different notes and sounds. All the same, it was still a magical moment. Now, I've not actually been on Manty Common for many years. I intend to come back at some time and have a wander around there and see what there is. Also, used to be good here for turtle dove, but so did Eakring Village. There used to be a couple of sites in Eakring Village where turtle doves bred, but I think now they're just about on the Nottinghamshire breeding species list, and I suspect that they've been lost as a breeding bird from the Eakring area. Well, the sun's getting lower in the sky. We've actually put the clocks back an hour tonight, so those that like an extra hour in bed will be overjoyed in the morning, because that's what you're going to get. But there's an ever increasingly thick carpet of golden leaves now falling on the floor of most of our woods and forests. Autumn is very much here, but there's still a lot of leaves that remain green, especially those under the canopy, such as across the wych elm that's here. I've got an assortment of leaf mines, hopefully to rear through and get through to adults. And I've got photos of said species. There's a couple actually that I've just took off elm. One, several leaf mines of a Philonerichta, and it's a Philonerichta species that don't find very often. It's Philonerichta schreberella. Long time since I've seen that, to be honest. The last time was at Wellow Park, just a few miles away. The other one that I found on elm appears to be Philonerichta tristrigella. That's the more regular one of the elm feeding Philonerichtas. But of other things that are here, this Stigmella acerus, which is now turning up absolutely everywhere that there's a field maple or a Norway maple. So, chance for you to go out and find one. They look quite nice, the mines, on a brilliantly yellow leaf that they are at the moment. But it's all part of what to look for in autumn. Leaf mining is a big part. It's something that is well worth doing, especially in terms of gaining county records, much needed county records of our leaf mining fauna. It's a very exciting area of fauna as well, because there's new species to be found pretty much every year. But what I need to find now is a nice drink and something to eat. I'm rather peckish and I've got a fair bit of wheezy wandering still to do. So, until another time.